What if I told you the future of the global economy might not be liberal, free and democratic, but authoritarian? For decades, the assumption was very simple. Open markets bring open societies, but today that story is unraveling. China's state-led capitalism now drives nearly 1/5 of global GDP, proving that wealth doesn't always lead to democracy. Meanwhile, Donald Trump's return signals a new era of protectionism and centralized power in the West, and Europe faces its own struggle against creeping authoritarian influence. The numbers are alarming. According to Freedom House, fewer than 20% of people worldwide live in fully free democracies. That means the vast majority are already under systems where economics and politics are tightly controlled. Capitalism, once celebrated as a force for freedom, is increasingly being reshaped into a mechanism of control, where prosperity doesn't necessarily equal liberty. So the question is no longer if authoritarian economics is rising, but how far it will go. Before we dive in and I leave you with two starkly different scenarios for the future of global economic system, hit that like button, subscribe and share this video, so you won't miss what's coming next. For years, we were told that free markets would eventually bring freedom. Open your economy, and sooner or later, democracy would follow. But China has rewritten that story.
China pioneered a unique model often called authoritarian capitalism. On the surface, it looks capitalist. Private businesses thrive, foreign companies invest, and millions have been lifted out of poverty. But behind the curtain, the state holds the reins. The government directs strategic industries, decides who gets access to resources, and uses economic power to reinforce political control. This approach has been astonishingly successful. China's economy now makes up nearly 1/5 of global GDP and has become a global leader in technology, infrastructure, and manufacturing. Its rise has forced the United States and Europe to rethink their own strategies. Suddenly, policies like industrial subsidies, reshowering production, and protecting key technologies are back on the table.
The myth that economic liberalization automatically leads to democracy has been broken. Instead, we see a hybrid system, capitalism without the political freedoms, once thought to be inseparable from it. We often imagine authoritarianism as something that happens far away, in closed regimes. But what if it's creeping into democracies themselves? Across the West, warning signs are hard to ignore.
Trust in institutions is falling fast. Polls show that faith in parliaments, courts, and even the media has dropped to historic lows. At the same time, polarization is tearing societies apart, making compromise nearly impossible. Into this vacuum step populist leaders, promising to defend ordinary people against corrupt elites. Yet many of them use fear, especially economic fears, to justify restricting freedoms and concentrating power. In the United States, Donald Trump's return has added fuel to this trend. His mix of protectionism, skepticism toward global institutions, and attempts to centralize decision-making marks a shift away from the democratic norms America once championed. Political scientist Stephen Levitsky calls this model competitive authoritarianism. Elections still happen, but the playing field tilts sharply in favor of those in power, making it harder for the opposition to truly compete.
So here is the unsettling question. If even strong democracies can slide toward authoritarian practices, how safe are the freedoms we often take for granted? Economic inequality is like a forest of dry timber, silent, waiting, and dangerously ready to ignite. Around the world, the gap between rich and poor are widened to levels not seen in decades.
According to Oxfam, the richest 1% captured nearly 2/3 of all new wealth created in the last 2 years, while billions struggle with stagnant wages and rising costs of living. Such extremes create not only frustration but fertile ground for anger at the system. In Latin America, this is often translated into cycles of populist leaders who ride resentment to power, promising immediate relief from economic pain, only to deepen instability. From Argentina to Venezuela, inequality has repeatedly driven swings toward authoritarian-style governance dressed in populist clothing. Europe, too, is not immune. Radical parties, both on the far right and far left, have gained traction by presenting themselves as the voice of the forgotten middle and working classes. Their message is simple. The elites rigged the system, and only a strong leader can fix it.
Economic inequality doesn't just strain societies, it acts as the very fuel that keeps authoritarianism fire burning, giving strongmen and radical movements the sparks they need to rise. Authoritarianism in the 21st century isn't carried by tanks rolling through capitals. It's hidden in algorithms, surveillance grids, and propaganda networks.
China alone has deployed more than 500 million surveillance cameras, many powered by facial recognition, creating what some call the most advanced digital panopticon in history. Artificial intelligence now tracks dissent before it even materializes, turning technology into a predictive tool of repression. But control doesn't stop at borders. Disinformation campaigns have become a global export. A study by Oxford University found that organized manipulation of social media was present in over 80 countries in 2022, double the figure just 4 years earlier. These campaigns don't just spread lies, they erode trust, sow polarization, and weaken democratic institutions from within. The West, meanwhile, faces a dilemma. How do you defend open societies when the very openness of information is weaponized against you?
From election interference to viral conspiracy theories, the battle is not about territory, but about truth itself. And here lies the intrigue. What happens when technology, once hailed as a great liberator of humanity, no longer opens doors, but quietly locks them shut?
The numbers speak volumes. By 2024, over 70% of the world's population lived under some form of authoritarian rule, according to Freedom House, marking the 18th consecutive year of democratic decline. Europe sits at the crossroads of this struggle. Figures like Garry Kasparov and Vytautas Landsbergis warn that the EU's incrementalism, endless debates, sanctions, and half-measures cannot match the decisive strategies of Moscow or Beijing. Russia, despite being hit with more than 20,000 sanctions since 2022, still sustained its economy with oil sales that reached $425 billion in 2023. China, meanwhile, now accounts for nearly 20% of global GDP, projecting economic leverage across Africa, Asia, and even Europe. The EU, with its fractured institutions and dependency on external energy and markets, often finds itself reacting rather than leading. This is less a clash of armies than of systems, open democracies struggling to defend their values against disciplined, state-driven economies.
In many ways, the world is entering a new Cold War, this time waged with pipelines, trade routes, and technology. Two paths stretch before us, and stakes couldn't be higher. On the one hand lies the reinvention of capitalism, a future where inequality is confronted head-on, where sustainability is more than a slogan, and where institutions reform to serve not just markets but people. This vision demands courage, stronger social safety nets, investments in education, green innovation, and policies that ensure opportunity is locked behind privilege. On the other path looms authoritarian capitalism, a system where elites tighten their grip, democracy becomes a shell, and surveillance replaces accountability. Already, nearly 70% of the world's population lives under regimes without declining political freedoms, according to Freedom House. This trend suggests that without reform, concentration of wealth and power could harden its permanent rule by the few. The future isn't written in stone. It depends on vigilance, on defending democratic institutions, nurturing civic engagement, and building media literacy in the age where disinformation is as dangerous as any weapon. The choice isn't whether authoritarian economics will rise, it's whether we let it define our future. So, which path will we take? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share this video so you won't miss what's next. Catch you in the next one.